Well, hello there, everyone at Lager Counseling Services. We are continuing to talk about eating disorders, and I'm going to be breaking it down into smaller, kind of like bite-sized chunks. No pun intended. That was a little weird. I didn't mean to just put it that way in regard to food, but yes, that is what we're doing. So basically, I want to keep it super simple because there's areas in the recovery of an eating disorder that we would need to address. And one area is their body perception. And we may see that in the DSM, like body dysmorphia. And that's one area. Another area would be the different types of eating problems, body image problems, the different types of behaviors that are categorized into different labels, basically. But it is important in some ways to understand the source and the way in which someone is addicted to eating or not eating or self-abuse in their mind. So I'm going to break down a few of the eating disorder uh, labels. So one is compulsive overeating. So a compulsive overeater is someone who is addicted to food, and basically they could also be somebody who binges. They could be somebody who binges and purges. So somebody can have more than one issue. A person with bulimia is compulsively overeating, but they may not have the same intensity of compulsive overeating, or they may. So they may like really, really believe that they've eaten a ton of food and then throw it up, work it out. They could be addicted to working out as a form of purging. And if you don't know what I mean by purging, purging is the act in which someone with an eating disorder gets rid of what they believe is the excess that they just did. So I'm breaking this down into a few different things. So let me kind of back up. So a compulsive overeater, you might hear it, people who are in like 12-step programs or who have been around a while, who are trying to recover from compulsive overeating, they might call themselves COEs, COE, compulsive overeater. And basically what that is they do not have anonymity like other people with different kinds of eating disorders do. So for them, their use of food, their abuse of food is very evident in the size of their body. So what can happen, you can have a person who's a compulsive overeater who is not obese, but very often you can have somebody who is obese is also a compulsive overeater as well. So there isn't one size fits all. Compulsive overeaters are addicted to food, and they can be addicted to particular types of food. And what you will eventually begin to find out is what is their drug, their food of no choice. So in the 12-step program, they'll talk about, what is your drug of choice? And some people say, well, we don't have a choice. This is our drug of no choice. So once somebody gets to a point where they're addicted to something and they just feel like they can't stop, that's where the no choice comes in. So a compulsive overeater can be somebody who you may never see them eat. They may be like, I don't understand, I barely eat all day long. But one of the things that is said is that their home and nighttime is the bar room. So people who compulsively overeat usually do so alone. They don't always. They may have a partner in crime, it could be a spouse or it could be a child or somebody that also compulsively overeats with them, but it's usually an isolated addiction. And what it is they will go and they will just consume large, large amounts of food. And it could be any kind of food. One of the things that I have done with people who are compulsive overeaters is that I eventually explore with them the type of food that they are addicted to. I'm not going to discuss that in this particular video because I realize that then I would trail off to a whole other exploratory thing that's really important therapeutically, but that will be in another video that will probably just be about compulsive overeating. So there's compulsive overeating. And with that, the person's body image, the way that they treat their body is they really never think about um, when they look in a mirror, they look from the neck up. They almost dissociate from the size of their body. And it's different with other eating disorders where people are super focused on their body. They're constantly body checking. Doesn't mean that someone who is a compulsive overeater isn't doing that, but one of the ways they are manage, this incredibly painful experience, painful in their body, painful, just incredible shame. They're building out an armor around themselves that is unconsciously protecting them, possibly from sex, possibly from people. It's building out opportunities for them not having to face certain things in their life. And I'll go into that in another way. Compulsive overeaters, again, they're the people who you'll see who are, they're typically overweight and they cannot stop. Just a side note, in terms of the actual food, one of the things it says in the 12-step program about alcohol is that it is a physical allergy coupled with an obsession of the mind. And the thing about eating and about compulsive overeating, if someone is addicted to sugar, very, very often they have an allergy. And they could also have the MTHFR gene that we test for in GeneSight. So I just want to throw that out to you. There's another avenue of finding out. Someone who has that gene mutation can be somebody who cannot process folate. And what happens is that when they have any white flour, pasta, pizza, any white breads, Italian bread, all of that stuff, it triggers a phenomenon of craving. And they're actually almost like allergic to that. And when you're allergic to something, it's like you almost are obsessively having to have it. That is just one aspect of compulsive overeating. And as I have said before, that eating disorders touch about 5 different areas of healing. One is the physiology of it. So somebody can have like some biological things going on. The other is their sexual history, their sexual development can play a very big part in it. The family of origin, their relationship with self and relationship with others. And there's so much healing that comes when somebody has this kind of deep and complicated addiction that we want to be really positive and mindful of the fact that the recovery from it, although it's touches on a lot of different branches, it's super, super healing in all areas of their life. So we'll go into that further. So basically, one of the things you could see with compulsive overeating is it's possible to see hoarding. You could see compulsive spending, something that's called body clutter. So it's like taking on a lot of clutter, not being able to throw things away. Also physical clutter. It's also avoidance of connection, or it's being bigger in a room, really wanting connection and love. A lot of times people who are compulsive overeating have been sexually abused, or they lost a parent at a very young age. They were, they learned the habit, or maybe no one allowed them to have feelings, and their feelings, the only way they managed feelings was with food. There's a lot to that, but I'm not going to continue on that yet. Bulimia can take its form in so many different ways. So there's anorexia bulimia, which is someone who starves and then they throw up, or they do some sort of form of bulimic action. And then there's people who are purging, meaning they vomit after they eat. And then there's people who are exercise bulimics who compulsively exercise. So if they eat and they do not exercise, it's almost like an OCD thing. So they obsessively eat, and then the compulsion to stop the fear of what they just ate because they're terrified of the food and of gaining weight, that then they purge out the food by overexercising. A lot of times you'll see injuries. You'll also see that if somebody does not work out, they're panicking because now they don't have that other end of the drug to counter the drug they just took. And when somebody's like anorexic bulimic, it could be that they didn't eat all day and they had a muffin. And when they had that muffin, they threw it up. So there's certain foods that for whatever reason they have programmed in their mind that they can have, and the ones that they can't, they must throw up. So, or, that was also laxative. So you want to look out for that too. Because a lot of times if you're speaking to someone and they're like, no, I don't, I don't purge, meaning throw up. I don't overexercise, but I have had clients who, through further exploration, I find out like, yeah, I did take some laxatives, but then you can find out that they are taking such an enormous amount of laxatives. They are so sick. So they will eat to the point where they are like drugged out, completely wasted on food to the point where they're in pain and they're falling asleep. Then they will take laxatives and they develop like a tolerance to laxatives. So they can get to the point where they're taking boxes of laxatives where they're so sick and then they're in the bathroom and then they can't go to work for the next day or 3 days. Or if somebody's like compulsively eating sugar, vomiting, whatever it is they're doing, they are so sick, irritable. And then if they try to get sober, they try to get clean, by the third day of no sugar, they are so sick because the withdrawal from sugar with such a large intake is really, really agonizing. Headaches, just no energy. There's a lot to that. So the thing with somebody who's bulimic, somebody who has bulimia, they have a desire to be special. It's not the same as somebody who's anorexic bulimic. So there's like a lot of nuances in there, and you don't want to get too caught up in the exact lines because they cross. People can go from being a compulsive overeater to being bulimic to being anorexic, and that is not an uncommon thing, and I'll tell you why. It is so somebody could be so addicted to food that they cannot stop. They've crossed the line. There's no way back. And the only way back is not to eat. But what they'll try in the meantime is, oh my God, I can't stop eating. So I have to find a way to counter this. So then I'll throw up, I'll take laxatives, I'll overexercise. I'm going to do something to stop this because I can't stop that, the overeating. Then gets to the point, and I fully really get this because I have been in this role where, you know what, no food is okay. It gets to the point where no food. So it feels like in a desperate attempt, the only way to be able to live with yourself is not to eat. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that is one course that people can go through is compulsive overeating, bulimic actions, and then anorexia. Next, so what I want to say about that, anorexia is an interesting thing. And I'm not sure if you want to just picture it, it's like a fear of food, a terror of food. But it can also be likened to a fear of connection, a fear of life. Addiction, sometimes there is an addiction underlying. They don't believe that they can not stop. So they don't believe they can stop, so they don't eat. But that's not all anorexics. There's an addiction to being small, to not being seen, hiding, shrinking due to shame. And the only way to gain control is to like to feel completely out of control. It's what happens is that when you don't eat, you feel beyond human. You gain a sense of control over life, which is no control. It's an illusion, obviously. There's a sense of power in not eating. You're different than everyone else. No, that doesn't have power over me. No, I'm not touching that. And it's like this kind of addiction to being in control of your body and your operating system. So it's like there's a need to be tight, to be small. The body feels more in control when there's no food. Most most of them do not see that they have a small body or a tight body. All they can see, their distortion in their view. People with eating disorders in general do not know what they look like. And that is one of the most painful parts of having an eating disorder. I have to say, there's so many parts that are painful, but that is one of the most painful parts. You feel insane. It's like, I have no idea what I look like. So one of the things they'll be like, could you just point out someone in this room who has thighs like me? Could you just tell me, does my butt look like that person's butt? Because they do not know. So any little, and they can magnify what they look like. And their image in the mirror is very often skewed and distorted. Um, body distortion is like paramount for them. And it's really, really painful. I just want to just throw the mirror is painful. And it's this wild relationship with your body, the mirror, yourself, and others, looking at other people's bodies, not understanding your own. That's why when we are going to assign someone to a therapist when they have an eating disorder, we're sensitive to, it's can really be an issue if they're assigned to someone who is a normal weight. Or it can be a real issue if they're assigned to someone who's overweight, or it can be a real issue if they're assigned to someone who is very thin. So, depending upon what their particular disorder is, will also define, in part, not every situation, how they'll handle it. Sometimes people, if they see someone who has just a healthy body, a couple extra pounds, they feel like they could catch it and they don't want exploration or therapeutic care from someone they believe they could catch something from. So they may be more drawn to somebody who they believe, like, okay, like this person is thin, or they could look at that person as thin and they feel so unbelievably jealous. They can't handle it and they feel like horrible about themselves. Another thing is we never bring up their body. We never talk about size or anything like that. I'm going to go further into that, but I don't want this video to be too long. I just wanted to give you some idea about these different types of disorders, and then we're going to go further into each one. The thing about each of them is very, very often they are in incredible turmoil. They are in constant self-abuse. They are completely hypervigilant about any food environment, any social environment. They are most comfortable alone. And bulimic people, interestingly, will very often wear tighter clothes. Anorexic people will wear looser clothes. And compulsive overeaters, depending, they very often will dissociate from their body, but they may also, there's a lot of variety in what they might do as well. Clothing is involved, and there's a whole hoopla. There's so much more to talk about, but I'm so glad you're all listening, and I look forward to the next video. I'll see you in a little bit.